Alan Carter, welcome to Dad Edge, my friend.
Hey, I am so happy to be here. I couldn't be more excited. And thank you so much for including me today.
My pleasure, man. This is an important topic and a fascinating project that you've done. Really, really cool. As far as letters from you and on a monthly cadence, which I'm fascinated with. Um, we're going to talk more about that, obviously, and the work that you're doing. I actually bought your book, and I'm excited to dive into that. But I'd love to actually start with let's just start with current state and marriage, kids. What does the family look like? Just so men can get some context on who Alan Carter is and what he's all about.
No, for sure. And thank you again, Larry. No, just thrilled to be here. And we are just starting a brand new chapter, which is that of empty nesters. So our eldest, Claire, is 27. She got married in May and married a wonderful guy from New Jersey. Our son lives in Salt Lake City. He's 25, also got married this year, just a few weeks back on Labor Day. And then our youngest, Emma, just went off to start her freshman year at college. And so leaving us alone and sort of a little bit bewildered because, as most parents will tell you, and as you know yourself, you are super engaged with your kids for a long stretch of time. And have that door suddenly close and start a new chapter has been really kind of fun for us to dip into, though not without some anxiety because you identify, right, as a mom and a dad, and all of a sudden we've got a new outlook on life.
I have a question I'm dying to ask you, man. What's it like having a quiet house? And I'm talking
It-
about the things that are you laugh, right? So I do want to hear the humorous side of this, but I want to hear the good things, and I want to hear maybe the things like, ooh, yeah, I didn't expect that. So yeah, I'd love to start with any one of those three.
No, I'd say my first reaction is it's awesome, right? Because you know that you and your wife and most parents, your most of your conversations and your life just revolve around the kids, right? There's always something to be done. There's always something for school or athletics or extracurricular. So much of your time is sucked into that, which is great. But all of a sudden, it's like we're dating again. I mean, we don't have any of those things anymore. So it's been really positive for my wife and I to really reconnect over the last month and talk about stuff that we frankly haven't had time for. So I guess that's my first response. Second is, man, there's some sadness, right? Because like you, man, I love being an engaged dad. I mean, nothing was more important to me than being a present father and a present husband. And now that that door is closed, there's some sadness around that. So we're breathing into that. We're learning all about it. I will say it's been a little, I think, more challenging for my wife, Mary, than I, because, I hustle off to work and I get engaged with projects and friends the way I always have. But my beautiful wife, Mary, she really hasn't worked full time since our first child was born 28 years ago. So her identity as a mom is suddenly not there as real as it used to be. So yeah, I'm just kind of helping her through that chapter and absolutely looking forward to the next step. So bittersweet is probably the summation of that.
How long you guys been married?
28 years. We got married in May of 93.
Wow. Okay. I have all kinds of questions for you, but I want to reflect back a couple things. Number one is I just get the feeling, and I could be wrong, but I get the feeling. What's your wife's name?
Mary.
Mary. I get the feeling that you and Mary have done some work in 28 years to keep yourselves connected. So when the kids are gone, like they are now, it's not like, oh, who are you again? Right? Because there's a certain element of peace in your voice and
Mhm.
happiness, and I would say even content when you talked about the season that you're in with her and being an empty nester. So is that assumption correct?
Yeah, it really is. I sense that, like you, I was blessed enough to marry my best friend. So we are soulmates, man. I know you describe your wife as that. And that's just huge. I think another thing that we're conscious of together is that we always try to put each other's feelings and needs before our own. So when you have two people who have that stance, you can literally tackle anything. I mean, you really can. And as you read the book, and as maybe some of your listeners do as well, you'll hear that a big part of my life is my Christian faith, and that's just been a rock for both Mary and I. And so not only is there are the two of us involved, but there's also a deep faith and a relationship with God, and that's been a big part of this transition and conversation, and delving into the new chapter together is that also.
Just a couple of quick takeaways there that I want to make sure the audience heard. A foundation that's a higher power than your own, your faith, right? A lot of couples, me included, our faith is pivotal to our family and to my wife and I's relationship. It's so important. The other thing too that you mentioned is friendship. Friendship is, at the end of the day, there's four elements to an extraordinary marriage, right? There's your self-care.
Yep.
There's the partnership, which is more the business side of marriage, the chores, the roles, the finances, all that. Third one is friendship. Fourth one's lovers. What a lot of people I think don't realize is that at the end of the day, am I friends with my wife? Is she friends with me? Are we buddies? Are we in each other's fan club? Do we have a deep knowing of each other? Do we like to do things together? Do we like to just hang out, right?
Mm.
And if you think about those three things, those four elements, friendship gets overlooked, I think, quite a bit because we're like, oh, well, she's my wife. So we don't necessarily identify friend sometimes. Oh, she's my lover, right? I have sex with her. So she's my wife and, she's my lover. Friends, I don't know about that one. Like I have buddies, right? I have friends I go have beer with or play golf with or whatever I do with friends. But sometimes we don't identify our spouses as our friends. And I think that that is something so important because I was just coaching a client on this the other day. My wife and I, same as you, we've been married 18 years and she is my best friend.
Yeah.
I joke with her, we punch each other in the arm, like, messing around, like, tickle each other, like just stuff that you do with like a friend. Not that I tickle any of my friends. That sounds really weird now that I say it, but I'm talking about you know what I'm saying? It's just like, we don't have that silver lining and be like, you're my wife and my lover, but you're not my friend. So I think that's really important for the audience to hear. I'm curious about, what does the house feel like now?
It's quiet, man. It really, really is. It's very quiet. So I will say that probably like most dads in my position, we have a great ongoing dialogue with our kids, even though they're not with us. So there's the group texts and there's the nonstop FaceTimes and phone calls. So that feels really good. There's almost an excitement that evolves around those because it's a rarer thing now than just having them in the kitchen across the table from us. So we really look forward to those moments and cherish them. So that definitely breaks up the quietness of the house. But there's a peace to it also. I mean, there really is. It's almost like we've had a good walk that's successfully been completed. And so we feel this peace and this, I hesitate to use the word job well done, but it's a little bit of weight off our shoulders, knowing that hey, we've successfully shepherded these kids into their next chapter, and that feels really good. So that peace that comes with that is definitely comprehensive.
I got to be honest, that brings me peace hearing that there's peace there. I have four boys. You have three kids. I have four boys. Four boys. There's a lot of energy. There's a lot of loud noises. And I got to
Yep.
tell you, I mean, like being just a regular human being dad, there are times where I'm like, oh my God, please just let me have a moment of quiet. Right.
Yeah.
And then here's the funny thing. Then I get what I asked for. Like, so I'll give you an example. My wife, um, I can't remember what it doesn't really matter. My wife and I had this rare thing happen where my two older kids were out. So like they were out with friends, my 15 and 13-year-old, they were out with friends one Sunday. And then my wife was like, hey, I'm going to go over to my parents' house. Would you mind staying back and waiting we call them the bigs and the littles. So 5 and
Got it.
7, those are littles, and the bigs are 13, 15. She's like, stay here, wait for the bigs. I'm going to go to my parents for the afternoon. I'm going to go over there, take them swimming, have dinner. I'm like,
Yeah.
oh, sounds amazing. I was like, I have the house to myself. Like this hasn't happened in you. So I sat back and I'm like, all right, I have an amazing Sunday. And that was cool for like 17 minutes. And then I realized I was like, this sucks. The quiet. So I've said this on the podcast a few times now. If you ever think that the noise in your house is deafening, silence is much louder.
Yeah.
And I didn't like it, to be honest. Like I was just like, this really sucks. I don't like this. I actually want to hear my kids in the background, even though sometimes I'm like, oh my God, can you please just be quiet? But
Hmm.
no, it's almost like knowing that they're there. But it really, the reflective aspect that I had in that point was I was like, I don't know if I'm liking that too much. I don't know if I like the quiet as much as sometimes I wish for it.
No, that's interesting, man. I think it's because you're still engaged in it. Like you recognize it's your job. It's your primary role right now in your life, man. There's nothing more important than you being that engaged dad and that engaged husband. And when that's not there, I think your subconscious recognizes that, like, hey, I'm not doing my job right now. I need to be have my hands in it.
Right.
So that's, I think, part of what you felt.
Yeah.
Good news for you and me is I think it evolves like I talked about. Like
Yeah.
that part of my job at least is has some closure to it. Now, I'm still a father. I've got a new role as that engaged dad that I'm leaning into now, but it's not the everyday engage within the house with the kids around role anymore.
Let me ask you this, and then I want to move on to your book because it's so fascinating. The how the just the desire to write your kids a letter on a monthly basis. I think it's fascinating. But you've been married for 28 years. You and Mary have an amazing relationship. It sounds like. Like I said, there's a lot of peace in your voice as you talk about her. You elevate when you talk about her. Your voice comes
Mhm.
up, your body language comes up, everything comes to life. And I don't know if you've ever heard these statistics or not, but everyone knows that the divorce rate is 50%. But what a lot of people don't know is that the 50% that stay together, only a third of those marriages actually identify their relationship as working and it's everything that they thought it should be or could be. Now, you and I,
Wow.
right?
Wow. I mean, wait, just tell me that again. So of the 50%, there's only 30% of that subset. That is stunning to me to
Right.
hear.
Well, then, so that 50% that stays together, they're divided up into three camps. And one third, one third, one third. So the first one third, hey,
Wow.
they're like you and I, like, man, this is
This
everything I
is
ever
awesome.
wanted. Yeah, this is
Yeah.
awesome. Like
Yeah.
I
Yeah. I love
love
it.
this
Can't
situation.
imagine not being this way. Yeah.
Exactly. And then the next one third is it's okay. It's not everything I really wanted, but it's not terrible. It's
Yeah.
okay. It's like it's good, but it's not epic, right? It's
Hmm.
sort of just there.
Yeah.
And then the final one third, that's what we call the divorce waiting room,
Phew.
because the final one third is like they have no connection. They resent each other. They don't even like each other. And here's the funny thing, not funny, but the top two reasons that those couples stay together is their perception of divorce is it's too expensive and it'll bring the family into financial ruin, or the second one is we got to stay together for the kids. But
Wow.
once those kids move out, boom, they're gone, right? So that's the
Oof.
step. But here you are. I've been married 18 years. You've been married 28. I would love for you to give our audience some advice on like, hey, if you want to elevate your marriage, here's how.
Wow. That is a question I wasn't prepared for. I guess the first thing I'll say is, man, I feel, as I know you do, I feel so blessed that I'm part of that small subset. What a blessing that is. And I don't know that I can offer any advice other than what I'd say again is I think faith in God or a higher power is huge as it relates to relationships. And I think again, the when if you bring to a relationship the belief that your partner is more important than you are, that just helps a whole lot, man. And that's a mindset that you can bring to any relationship. um, so that's the second thing that would come to mind. It's just the blessings and that mindset that we each bring to each other. I can't. God, you and I think a lot of books have been written about this topic, and I feel badly for people who don't have what you and I have, and I wish I could be more constructive than that. It's just a head scratcher to me.
Well, let me bounce some ideas off you, because like, doing the podcast and learn everything I've learned, there are certain things that successful couples do that others don't. So, if you think about this for a minute, I told you about the four pillars of an
Yep.
extraordinary marriage: self-care, partnership, friendship, lovers. The foundation that those sit on, right? I mean, now you and I would say faith, right, was one of those, but really and that is absolutely true. Uh, the other thing too is communication and connection. And what a lot of I think what a lot of men and women really don't understand is we're truly wired differently, right? And how I communicate with Jessica, how you communicate with Mary, is probably a little bit different than how you and I as men would communicate with each other. So, like for instance, if I come to you and I say, "Hey, Alan, I got this thing on my mind," right? My I am not talking to you to vent and connect. I am talking to you because I want you to tell me what you think I should do. I want you
we
to
want we
advise
want
me.
to fix it. Men want
Yeah,
to fix things. Yeah, I
yeah,
get that. Uh-huh.
exactly. And then when women come to us and they're venting, we put our coaching and advisement hat on and we want to tell them how to fix it. And that is very condescending to them, right? Because they're like, "Did you not just hear me?" And be like, "Yeah, I'm telling you how to fix it." No, 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 that's not what I need. Well, of course it's what you need, but it's not what they need. But I think, there are certain skill sets, and I think successful couples learn skills. So, like, for instance, if you want to have a connection and elevated communication with Mary, I have no doubt that there are certain things that you abide by, right? There are certain rules that you follow, right? Maybe it's, hey, when she's talking, like, I put this thing down and I look right at her, right? And I listen. Maybe it's emotional validation. We emotionally validate our women so they feel seen, heard, and safe. Maybe we use things like mirrors or tactical empathy or something like that. To where bottom line is this: it seems like successful married couples that are very, very happy are always eager and curious to learn new ways to elevate their relationship and connect, versus I think couples that struggle, they have this perception of like, if it doesn't come naturally, maybe it wasn't meant to be. If I have to work at this, then maybe we should have never gotten married, and maybe I just don't love him
Mm,
anymore. Maybe she doesn't love me. Or it's like, if we have to ask for help, oh my God, we are broken. And
mm.
that's so unfortunate, right? I mean, but I think successful couples are open to learning new ways to elevate the relationship. What do you think?
Yeah, I think that's totally true. And I think the recognition of, look, like each couple is completely unique. We each bring different experiences and different personality traits and different preferences to the table, and taking the time to learn each other's
Yeah.
preferences is huge. I mean, just silly stuff like, I'm terrible, Larry, after like 8 o'clock at night. Like if you hit me with something heavy, it could trigger me. And
Yeah.
so Mary, really knows that. So we're just not going to discuss anything like that. Financial stuff triggers me too. If she hits me with a, "Hey man, we owe $5,000 on this," she has to know how to massage that a little bit.
Yeah.
And the opposite is true too. I know what her triggers are and I'm sensitive to that. So I think each couple has to come at it with the real desire to know how to have those conversations, especially when they're difficult ones. And just to touch on another thing is, look, man, this is hard work. All relationships require effort. And so I think it'd be foolish for any of us to go into any relationship and expect not to have to work for it. I
Yeah.
mean, we struggle with everything in our lives. It ain't easy to be as fit as you are. I mean, that comes with a lot of blood, sweat, and effort, and relationships do too. And so that mindset of, hey, this is worth it to me. I really want to work on this. Even just that, the way you come at it from that angle, I think is hugely beneficial.
Yeah. Is this the wrong time to tell you that we're sending you a bill for five grand to come on the podcast?
It's actually a good time of day. It's 3:30 here in Chicago, so you're good, man.
Yeah, we're on Central Time, so we're good.
You're good.
No, I think that's right. You have to, one thing we teach our guys in our mastermind is one of the things is know thyself without shame or guilt.
Yeah,
So so for instance, I'm the same as you. Like literally why I would get up at 4:30 every morning. So by the time 9 p.m. rolls around, I was joking with my 15-year-old last night. He's like, "Are you okay?" And I'm like, "It's my witching hour." It just is. It's where my patience and my resilience is probably at its end because I'm so exhausted.
right.
But yeah, it's kind of like my witching hour. But I'm like, hey, I just know myself that I need to be more cautious around that time. I need to be more intentional about my responses, that kind of thing. And people are less likely to hit me with surprises at that time of night, kind of like Mary is with you,
Perfect. Yeah. See,
which is
Jessica
good.
gets you, man.
Yeah.
She's learned that. You guys have learned each other. And look, that's required time and patience and work to get there.
Yeah.
But I mean, there's nothing, it's hugely worth it, right? Look at you
Right.
guys, 18 years going strong. I mean, that's sometimes what it takes. So yeah, there's definitely work involved in relationships.
Absolutely, man. I want to get to your book. So Letters from a Father. It's on Amazon. For years now, it's been your habit to write a monthly letter to your kids during their teenage years. So I would love, oh man, I'm so curious to hear about this. First of all, I want to hear about the inception of this. Like, what what was it that triggered the light bulb moment? To be like, what if I did a letter a month for each kid? What was the inception of that idea?
Yeah, it didn't even start with even that much thought. I think we were I just saw my kids one day and I'm like, something triggered me and I missed the moment to talk to them about it. And I think we were just apart. So I just dashed out a note to them that quickly became a page and a half and sent it off to them. So that first letter sort of happened just by virtue of it happening. And then when I saw the response and felt the response in me, frankly, I just kept doing it. And it was interesting is, all families have these really unique experiences that you just go through. I mean, just items and events in the course of your week where something special happens or doesn't happens or you notice something. In my view, those become really learning opportunities or at least an opportunity to really have a good dialogue with the kids. And so that's really what spawned it. And it grew from there. And I'll tell you, Larry, look, this was never meant to be a book, man. I just was writing these things. And a couple of years into it, my mother and father got a hold of a few of these letters through my wife. And they called me up one day and said, son, man, these are awesome. You've got to share these things with the world. It might be helpful to families and dads. And you ought to do it. So that was a stunner for me. And my father actually went through the process of connecting with some literary agents and publishers. So here we are. I mean, years later, and it's amazing how that grew out of really nothing. So you're not looking at an author by design; it's almost by happenstance.
So, do you have a template for the letters, or is it just mostly? Do you write the letters at the end of the month, the beginning of the month? Is it more of a reflective of like the entire month? How does it work?
Yeah, it's sort of triggered more than anything by an event. And it could be anything as you dig into the letters, man. I'll just pull out an example. We were going on a ski trip out west one day, and you know what a schlep that is, bagging skis and boots and suitcases and getting,
I actually don't. I've never skied. Isn't that terrible? It's
all
like
right.
it's on my bucket list. But yeah,
First of all, you should do it. It's amazing. But any family trip, as you know, involves a lot of schlepping, right? So we were arrived at the Denver airport, hopped on the rental car bus, exhausted, towing kids and gear, and after a delayed flight. And there on this rental bus, I remember to this day, was this little 5-year-old boy, and he was so excited about the opportunity to be on a bus in a new city, checking out the world going by and the sights and the sounds. And I mean, this was a bus, right? And which was the coolest thing to him. And just to see his awe and wonder. And my reflection in that moment was how, we as adults tend to lose that awe and wonder. And we get so bogged down and mired in the day to day. And our kids do too, especially teenagers with the social media and the coolness that they've got to embrace around their peers, man. It's just, we lose that. And so the lesson from that letter was just, man, why can't we go back to embracing the awe and wonder of being alive, of being healthy, being vibrant, of having people and sights and sounds around us? So that's just one example of a letter that, was triggered that I love. And the opportunity to have that dialogue with the kids is super fun. And it's really helps the family reflect on things that go by us so quickly if we let them.
That is so cool. I want to point something out that you probably have already thought of, but something really emerged for me because I'll be honest, man, I've been struggling with it lately. Um, I have a hard time remembering things,
Mm,
and
right.
I think a lot of it, like literally, like this morning, I woke up and I was like, what were the details of some of the things that happened yesterday? And when I say that, like in the evening, like with my kids, like I took them to the Halloween spirit store, we picked out costumes, I took them out to dinner, and what I try to do is I try to be at times, I'm not always good at it, but especially lately over the past several months, I try to be like when I'm across the table from my kids or putting my kids to bed, like I'll listen to the sound of their voice. I will look
Mm,
at like their facial expressions, their eyes, and I literally just try to like take in like my 7-year-old, right? Right now he's at this like super sweet age where everything is daddy, daddy, daddy. I love you, I love you, I love you. And he's so affectionate. I'm like, man, I want to like literally record this if I can to remember it. And sometimes it's like hard for me to remember the details because like I mean, even tonight, 3 out of 4 of the boys, my wife and I have to divide and conquer to get them to their activities, and we're still double booked. So
right.
like there are times where life moves so fast and so furious. It's okay, do this, okay, or this, okay, dinner, and then okay, then this, and it's like very rarely I'm sitting here thinking. I was telling my wife, I was like, I feel like we don't slow down, and I feel like I'm missing out on actually memories. So my first thought is, as you talk about this, is not only are these amazing letters to your kids, but for you, it probably serves as this ginormous, amazing memory bank of thoughts, feelings, reflections, and even stages that they were at.
Such a good call. And yes, man, it does. And to have that on my bookshelf and frankly, to have it as a legacy is another huge benefit. And yeah, I just counsel all dads. Look, I would start with journaling, and I don't know if you do this, but you know how important journaling it is. Just at the end of the day, just to write down your thoughts and reflections and learnings from the day, and that's where you capture those moments so that you can remember and process things. And, I would suggest anybody who's listening who's interested in that, just use a journal to start your own letter writing for the same reason. Not only is it awesome for your family and a dialogue with the kids, but it does, to your point, it helps you capture these beautiful memories that otherwise would pass you by. And it creates a beautiful legacy for you when you and I are long gone, right?
Yeah, that's such a good point. Because if you think about it, I think one of the cool things about having a book, right? I mean, yes, granted, you're providing value for somebody who reads something, right? But at the same time, it's a really cool way also to leave your legacy of connections and ideas. Most importantly, though, your idea, which I think is so brilliant because it's so personalized. From a self perspective, like so from a you perspective, right? It's like, man, what an amazing treasure, right? To
Mm,
have like something that I can look back on and read, and I remember that. Like I remember being in that moment. Like I remember the colors, and I remember the sounds, and being able to read it again brings me back. Versus like, oh yeah, there was that one time. Yeah, yeah, I kind of remember that. Um, as far as I know, you said, just journal, and then you gave the example of the little boy who is like, I remember those thoughts and feelings too when I was little. Like being on a bus was like the coolest thing ever. Um, but like, let's talk about like further into the teenage years, and I'm talking more like 15, 16, 17 years old when maybe they're driving, they're with friends. And another scary statistic, I know I kind of shocked you with the first statistic with people who are still married, but 80% of our one-on-one time with our kids is gone by the time they're 12.
yes. Now that one I'm aware of, and
Yeah.
that's terrifying.
It's crazy, isn't it?
It's really striking. Yeah, it really, really is. And yeah, that makes that time that we do have more precious, and it makes it more important to make sure that the reactions, the I should say the interactions we're having our kids are good ones and impactful ones and full of teaching moments and all that stuff.
Yeah, and that's the other thing too is, you get to this teenager, right? Son or daughter, doesn't really matter, but they kind of get this sort of, for the most part, I'm not stereotyping all kids, but this sort of like this tougher outer shell,
Oh yeah.
right? Where they're not necessarily opening up to you as much as they're opening up to friends. Tell me about how maybe the letters have served as maybe a bit of a an entry point into that barrier a little bit, right? To just kind of get to their heart a little bit.
No, it's great. I will say too, you know, and you're seeing it right now with your bigs. You can almost chart the perceived intelligence of a father in his kids' eyes with how old they are. So your littles still think you are like the smartest, best looking, most intelligent guy on the planet. But as our kids get into their teenage years, man, that relative perceived intelligence sort of drops off a cliff. So that by the time they're 17 or 18, they look at you and I like, oh my God, how can this guy like string a sentence together, you know? And the good news is though, Larry, that like my daughter who's 27, she thinks I'm the smartest guy who ever walked again. So it comes back. It's a sine curve. Do you know what I mean?
I hear you, man. I was gonna say it's not just the bigs. I'm waiting for my 7-year-old to be like, "What's wrong with you?" Like,
Yeah,
you know what
it'll
I mean?
come, man. But
Yeah.
back to your question, I think it's interesting. Like sometimes, I would write these letters that pour out my heart, and you send them to your teenage kids, and it seems like at the moment it goes into a void, right? Because there's no immediate response. It wasn't like, my 17-year-old kid is going to run into my room and say, Dad, I'm so excited about this letter. Can we sit down and process it? Can we talk about it right now together? This is awesome. I mean, you're not going to get that. And nor should you expect that. But man, I've seen it in these kids' lives. And sometimes a year would go by before they'd reflect back on what I wrote them. And that's okay. It's okay. And I think it did help, to your point, pierce that shell, just make them know that if nothing else, hey, I've got a dad who really loves me and really cares about me and is taking this kind of time to pour into me. They're getting that in the moment, if nothing else. And you know how valuable that in alone itself is.
That is so true. The other thing too, I'm fascinated to know. Um, let's talk about before you started doing these letters. What I'm really want to know is, did you see any differences in your connection with your kids after you started doing these?
Yeah, and I think I'm wondering if that isn't my own evolution as a dad versus the impact of the letters. It's probably a little bit of both. And even a third variable is my own faith journey, right? My belief in Christ and my personal relationship there. But yes to all those things. I think, if you, and you can almost track it in the earlier letters in the book, themes would be all about the power of resilience, the benefits of hard work, effort, all that kind of stuff. And then think as I mellowed, the impact of love and relationships, and those things come more to the forefront. So I guess that's a long answer to your great question is, yeah, there was definitely a change in me, a change in our relationship. I think it's all been positive. It really has been.
Not surprising. I want to go back to guys in general. We kind of tend to get overwhelmed sometimes. And it's like, if we're gonna get in the car, we're not gonna get in the car unless we can go 90 miles an hour. We're not gonna go to the gym unless we can go there for 90 minutes. Like, we're very full throttle or no throttle. This idea that you have though, that you've been doing this practice of one letter per month. Um, where could men? What is the smallest thing that men could do to start that process or to start something like that?
I would say the first thing is just to notice, right? Just be, if you're, if as Jesse Itzler loves to say, be where your feet are and be present and engaged, and then notice those things and recognize an opportunity when it happens. Like that example I gave you with the little boy on the bus, just notice that and then pull on that thread. And that's where to start that conversation and start that dialogue, whether it's either in person or through a letter or both. I mean, that's what I'd encourage dads to do, because you're right, man. We blow past stuff so quickly. It's our nature. And I have a lot of regrets, as I'm sure a lot of working dads do. We sometimes we think the best way we can serve our families is by financially providing for them. And that involves the grind and the hard work and all that sort of stuff. And we blow past these beautiful opportunities to have just loving engagement with our kids. And man, that does more for the family than any kind of money that we could add to the pile beyond what's needed. Does that make sense?
It makes total sense. To be honest, like, I mean, we've talked about this on other podcasts, but kids really don't care. Like, they don't care, like, if you're making $1 million or if you're, as long as their needs are met,
Right. There's
you
food
know,
on the table. They're
food on,
not going
right.
hungry. Exactly right.
And they know that there isn't a financial worry, right? Because I remember growing up, I don't know how you grew up, but I remember growing up where we didn't have a whole lot of money and I could feel that stress. And it had a feeling of we're not safe, which is an uncomfortable feeling. You know, you could just sense it in the air.
Right.
But I think as long as your financial needs are being met to where like at least that feeling of, hey, we're financially we're safe. Okay. We're paying our bills, we have food on the table, everybody has their needs met, like we're
Yep.
good, right? I can't even remember what it was. I think it was $75,000 might be, you probably know better than I do. $75,000 is anything over that. There really isn't more happiness that comes with that, right? Or you probably know that statistic better than I do. What
Yeah,
is
because
it?
this is my business. My day
Right.
job is I lead a wealth management team in a major firm. So we deal with this all the time. And it's interesting too. You can pull that thread further on that conversation. What we've seen is the greater the amount of wealth. I mean, if you get to a level of wealth that is far exceeds your lifestyle, the complexities build in less happiness and more opportunity for dysfunction, and actually gets worse for the family than better. So yeah, you're exactly right on.
My 13-year-old and I, we kind of more to that story, we drive by this massive mansion on the way to his school, which by the way, Josh, if you're listening, we're talking about you. He's actually a good friend. I see him in the gym every single morning, but he's a very wealthy, very successful luxury custom home builder.
Hmm.
And we're like, I guess, middle class, upper middle class where we live. And so on the way to school, there's this, like, no joke. I mean, there's this monster house, right? That's on 5 acres that you can see it because it's kind of on a busy street. And my 13-year-old, I'm driving him to school and I'm like, man, I was like, look at that thing. He's like, yep. I was like, let me ask you something. I was like, would you rather, grow up in something like as grand as something like that? Or if you had your choice, or would you rather live in the home that we live in? And he didn't even hesitate. He's like, the home I live in. I was like, wow. And we live in like I mean, it's a decent home. It's a ranch, it's a 5 bedroom ranch, finished basement, and everyone, I'll share that part here in a second of what it's like here. But I was like, really? I was like, why do you say that? He's like, I don't need that. He's like, that's too big. I was like, what do you mean too big? He's like, well, I don't know. He's like, it'd be cool, right? It would be really cool, but I think I would get lonely. I was like, what do you mean? What do you mean you think you get lonely? He's like, I don't know. He's like, it's like I'd be on, like, if I was like on the West Wing or whatever you want to call it, and everybody was in the East, like I'd feel like I'm at home by myself. And he's like, but I guess it'd be kind of cool if friends came over. Like they'd probably be pretty impressed. He's like, but I don't think I would feel, I can't remember what adjective he is, settled or at home or something like that. And I told him that, and what I was going to say, and I told you I'd talk about it here in a second, is I was like, I agree with that. I was like, because the thing I love about our house is it's just big enough to where everyone has their space. And if you need privacy, you can definitely, you can get it. Um, but it's also small enough to where you can't get too far and we can't hear you. Right. I mean, literally, like my son's, he just came home from school. He went downstairs in his room, but I'm 25 feet from his door.
Yeah,
So like, I know he's in there. He could probably hear me podcasting,
that's
but,
awesome.
but I think
Yeah.
that's a long way to say that, you know, we don't necessarily need to provide the means that we think in order to have that connection.
Yeah, that's really interesting, man. First of all, you got a wise son and obviously a really good dad to build that into him. And I think a further reflection is, we, especially men, we spend so much time chasing, these shiny red dots and the what I'll call the relentless pursuit of more is can be really contrary to our own happiness and satisfaction. So, and I'm guilty of that myself in my own life. And it's that constant treadmill of business and climbing the ladder and this and that. But that can bring a lot of bad things over the years to doing that too.
I agree. I agree. Hey, I want to make sure that we talk about everything that is appropriate and most meaningful about this book and about giving tools to men who want to go out and do something like this. So, with that being said, is there anything we haven't talked about that has been of the utmost importance that we need to cover?
No, that's a great question. I think, like you, man, I am super interested in just providing whatever resources necessary to have a country full of really engaged and loving dads. I mean, I don't think you and I could overstate the impact that that can have. And I also recognize that each family is unique, man. Like you grew up very differently than I did in terms of your father figure in your house. And in some families, it's got to be the mom playing both roles, right? And I just think though, if we can pass along any tool necessary to dads, we're going to change the outcome for a whole lot of kids. And I live in downtown Chicago. You see it too in St. Louis, man. We can witness almost daily the devastation of so many families where there isn't just engaged parents, mom or dad, and gosh, it's just like a train wreck. And so I'm super passionate about, like you are, in this space.
I love that, man. We need more guys fighting this fight, man.
Yeah, we
We
really
really
do.
do.
And you said well back that self-care is a big part of that. Yeah, I mean, I think that's into that too. And that's why I love what you do in terms of fitness and mindset. I mean, all those tools go hand in hand and the community aspect of it as well. And just giving dads ideas, maybe like a letter writing campaign like I've done. All that stuff adds up, man. And it would literally change the next generation for sure. And the generation after that as well.
Amen to that. I truly, truly believe that. If you really look at the statistics, and I don't have them in front of me, but all you have to do is Google fatherless home statistics. And there are some scary things. I think it was, 78% of teenage suicides come from fatherless homes. 92% of incarcerated individuals come from fatherless homes. Um, Daughters being pregnant in their teenage years, I can't remember the percentage, but it's very high. The percentage of daughters that get pregnant in teenage years with fatherless homes are very high. So the father, makes a huge impact. I had Meg Meeker on the show who wrote
Yeah.
the book Strong Fathers, Strong Daughters.
Yep.
And she said, if you put an engaged father under the roof of every house in America, the course of the world and life as we know it would change drastically. Like those are her words.
Yeah, I don't think she's exaggerating, man. I
I don't
think
either.
that's true. And the other side of it too, you can look at periods of history and look when societies um, intentionally disrupt the family. And of course, the nearest example is the Hitler Youth. I mean, this was a state-sponsored drive to cut apart the family, disengage fathers, and look what happened. It was horrific. So yeah, all this stuff ties hand in hand. So back to you, man. I'm so thrilled to be, watching you do what you do. Thank you for your unbelievable efforts in this space.
Oh, my pleasure, man. My pleasure. And thank you. Back at you. I want to make sure the men have time. I'm sorry, you have time to tell the men where they can find your book and everything that you're doing.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I'll say too, look, I have no interest in this as a moneymaker. So all the proceeds are going this year to a fantastic charity here in Chicago called the Chicago Hope Academy. This is a Christian high school that works with kids who don't have what you and I have, which are great families and supportive fathers. And it's just a beautiful beacon of hope in Chicago, aptly named, I'll say. So, every dollar goes to the Chicago Hope Academy this year, first off. Second is, yeah, the Amazon link's a great place to go for it. And I hope you'll provide that in the show notes, Larry, just to give folks an opportunity to see it. And yeah, I'd be delighted to sign any copies if people would like that, or send along a bunch if folks don't have the means to buy it. I'd be delighted to send it to them directly, and people can contact me through all the socials. I'm Allen, Allen in Chicago on Insta is probably the best way to DM me.
Cool. Well, absolutely. So we'll have a link for the Amazon link in the show notes, and we'll also have a link for your social media. So for men who want to reach out and contact you directly, we'll have that in the show notes. Gentlemen, for the show notes, go to thedadedge.com/Friday22. Again, thedadedge.com/Friday22. That's not spelled out. Those are two numbers, 2 and 2. Okay. We'll have the link for Alan's book. We'll have all of his social media handles. We'll also have a link in there too for our brand new creating more patience and emotional resilience in your life. That's our online course, and the coupon code for 50% off as well. Alan, this was awesome, man. I really, really appreciate you coming on. You're a breath of fresh air, man. And I think you're doing really great work in the world.
Thank you, Larry. I appreciate that so much. Kudos to you, and back at you on all that. It's been a delight to have this time together.
Back at you, my friend. Gentlemen, go out, live legendary. Take care.